it's really critical, whether you have 3 people or 30 people or 300 people, if you don't have a leadership mentorship piece in place, it's really difficult to keep this going. It's really difficult to continue a succession plan. And so I want to touch on that for a moment. One of the biggest strategies that I've seen that fosters a culture of mentorship is opening it up for team members to ask somebody in the organization who they would like to be partnered with. And it doesn't have to be necessarily their direct manager. Where this can go wrong and sometimes just not fit really well is when you have mentors assigned to certain people, where it's like, hey, I'm your mentor, right? It's kind of like, hey, I'm your person. What we want to do is have people identify the people that they want to be led by, and that they respect, and that they admire, that they want to learn from. So I think that's critical. The second one as well for mentorship and leadership is having some specific topics that you guys are focused on every single month. So, some of the big ones that come up are accountability, kind of leading in difficult conversations. How do you help grow in your current position? How do you have a conversation about a development plan and actually deliver that to someone? Right? There's probably other topics as well. Managing within the law is obviously a really big one. But having a little bit of a curriculum and making sure that some of those topics are focused on, every single year and every single month you guys have something specific on that. I've seen that work so well in so many different organizations because leadership development isn't just something that you can have once a year at a retreat. It's just not, or any of the things that we're talking about. They have to be continued, focused on behaviors. And there has to be an openness for the mentors to be able to share some of the things that have worked for them, and here's some of the things that haven't worked for me, right? And so if there's a little bit more of that openness and transparency, I've seen that work really, really well, specifically with organizations, to say, hey, if I'm going to be asked as a mentor or a team lead, or maybe I've been in leadership for quite some time, I want to be able to share on a specific topic that helps us grow and go a little bit deeper. And here's what I would always do, and here's what I would never do. Right? Those are great questions to answer for any of those topics. All right. So when we're talking about developing future leaders, so these are folks that are within your organization. And again, when I say leaders, they can have a management role, but they might just be taking that next step. They might be taking that next, leap into, whatever department or whatever area they're in. So developing those future leaders, the big one is having a training and development program that really supports that leadership growth. And then creating some career paths and growth opportunities. And so, I just want to kind of open it up. Have you guys ever had anyone who says, gosh, I don't quite see a path for me here, or I don't really see a way for me to, be able to promote into a next level position, so I just don't really know if I should stay? Have you guys ever had conversations like that with anyone? I've had conversations like that with people. And so that can be a really hard challenge. And if we don't have something really structured when it comes to their development and to their growth, and they don't feel like they have a path forward, even if that means that they're staying in their current role, they don't necessarily have to always jump into different roles, as we know, for them to be able to grow, for them to be able to move forward. And so I think it's really important as we're creating career paths to do a couple things. One is and I focused on this just a moment ago, I really want to make sure that people are blooming where they're planted. So some people, especially kind of millennial and younger, are focused on jump into the next thing real quick and don't necessarily have that same mindset of, okay, how can I really be proficient and really strong in my current role so that it will support me to the next phase. And so sometimes, and not just that age range, but a lot of times it's, I need to jump into the next role, or I need to become a manager, I need to become a leader, I need to, whatever it is, maybe this will pay me more. And so what we want to do is have real open conversations, not only during their growth journey, but at the very beginning, like right when they get hired, right? So it could sound like or look like something like this. Hey, Henry, this is my son Henry, by the way. He's with Spring Chicken Socials. He was confused for one of the waiters earlier. So I wasn't going to call you out, Amy, but I just thought it was hilarious. It was great. Yeah, he was going to try to help with whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but yes. So Yeah, so Henry's helping film for today. But you know, for Henry's age range, you know, he's 18, but that time frame, everything moves so fast. Everything moves so fast. And it's really kind of hard sometimes, not to slow people down, but to help them see what it could look like with just a little bit more time, just a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more focus, a little bit more time to help them develop their results, to develop sometimes a character, right? How can we really help them see the benefit of that this is for their long-term success? And so by creating those career paths, again, it might be a conversation of them staying where they're at, but helping them know right when they get hired, hey, my goal is to help you to be the most successful that you can be in this role. And that when you're ready, because we have a really great program to help you know when you're ready, and we're both gonna know, then we're gonna be able to move you to that next phase or help you be ready for that next phase. I just think that's really critical, and because sometimes, again, people want to jump further ahead, or sometimes you have folks who are kind of afraid to move forward. They don't know specifically what this can look like for them. Maybe you see a lot of talent in someone, and you're like, oh my gosh, if they would just step up a little bit more, if they would just you know, be able to move forward a little bit, it can make a huge difference. All right, so we're going to talk about leveraging scorecards for succession planning. And so when we're talking about succession planning scorecards, what are some of the key metrics? And I'm just going to share a couple, and we'll probably open it up to you guys as well. But you know, specifically when we're talking about, let's say, for a leadership position, I want to know specifically some of the things that help drive great performance and drive great teams, right? So that can look like, hey, is a leader having consistent one-on-ones with their team? Is a leader doing development plans with their team, and those are being updated every 90 days? Is a leader taking their own personal growth seriously and investing? You had mentioned 20 hours a year, right? I would say that's like so small. It's so small, right? Katie listens to more podcasts, you know, like she listens to 20 hours every month, really, I'm sure, right? It's true. Yes, yeah, right? Come on. But no, seriously, it has to be ingrained in part of their plan with whatever you feel like makes the biggest difference. And sometimes what we do when we look at succession planning, or we look at even results and looking at performance evaluations, is the fruit, right? Like what did it end up looking like at the end of the year? Well, there's so much that needs to be done on a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis for leaders, and really for anybody in an organization, that we can track. And we can work backwards and say, what does your learning look like? What are your learning hours? And Mark, I know that's a huge deal for you guys, right? Is ongoing, continued learning and being a lifelong learner, right? And you guys have specific goals around that. That's a big deal. And I really wish more organizations would do that, because it's so critical for the whole organization to be able to grow. But that shows me, hey, these are really some pretty basic and simple examples that I just shared, right? And they're the hardest things for leaders to consistently do. I want consistency. I want small, consistent wins over time, right? And if I can get that, then I can point to, man, they're able and capable of taking on more. So I've just thrown out a couple of examples, but I'm just curious from your guys' specific industries, or maybe you guys have been tracking something specific within your organization. You're like, gosh, maybe it's for leaders, maybe it's just in general, that have been really great metrics for your guys' success. And I know we've got a lot of different industries, so you know not everything will apply for every group. But is there maybe a couple metrics that come to mind, just as examples to kind of help us out here? This is that participation time again. So.
We track retention.
What's that?
Oh, we track retention.
Retention, yep, that's a big one for you guys, right? Yeah, absolutely. And not only for the leader, right, but obviously for you guys as HR, because you're wanting to make sure that you're staying on top of retention. I would say, what are some, I'm not going to pick on you, but I'm going to kind of pick on you for a second, that's okay. So what do you think leads to great retention? Like what helps influence retention in a positive way when it happens?
A listening environment. The employees need to know that they're being heard.
Employees need to know they're being heard. Awesome. So what are some ways you think with leadership specifically, or maybe with teams where that can happen? That kind of, how does that get fostered, or how does that like stay consistent?
Regular feedback cycle from the management where things are being, relayed. Not that every idea is being implemented or accepted or even thought that it was good, but they know that they're being heard, that ideas are being listened, evaluated, and then understanding a plan, whether or not it includes their ideas or not, and why those plans are being chosen.
Absolutely, I love that. So just to summarize, being heard, right? This kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier of being valued, right? So are they being asked for their feedback? Are ideas being implemented if they make sense, right? If they're not, if ideas aren't being implemented, are they getting feedback back to them, right? Is that kind of what I heard as well? Yeah. And then just feedback in general. Hey, where's performance at for them, right? And do they know that more than just once a year? Do they know that consistently and continually, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we encourage regular conversations with management because we do 2 semi-annual performance cycles.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody doesn't want to wait 6 months to hear if they're doing something wrong.
Right.
They want to know right away.
Absolutely.
They want to know the good right away and the bad right away. So we use performance more for goal planning and career planning and less for the day-to-day.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to summarize, these guys do it every 6 months, right? And have that consistently so that people know this is the goal, this is some of the benchmarks, but you're getting, more consistent feedback, obviously, maybe weekly or every 2 weeks, or maybe even in the moment, right, as things are happening. So I love that. I found that to be true. There's this tension, and especially with the workforce, and this was touched on earlier, where it's like, well, gosh, we don't have enough people, so how do we hold people accountable? And, we need to give feedback, but we don't want to, push too hard. Well, what I've found is that the frequency of feedback, the consideration with feedback, right, and the more that we do it, the easier it gets, especially for leaders. And if it's really structured too, so it's not just pulling somebody in the office, but actually being able to be structured in, hey, this is specifically what happened, right? And here's the impact, and here's how we want to change that, right? And developing some solutions with them. If it's something that's, it's corrective. But sometimes for managers and leaders, they can really, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things I hear working with leaders with so many different businesses is they really struggle with giving timely feedback, right? Giving specific feedback, giving feedback that's transformative, not just like, hey, that stunk, don't do that again, or maybe getting frustrated about it, right? You can give feedback, but how do you give feedback in a powerful way? And I think really helping managers do that consistently and tracking that, right? So if I hear you right, really making sure that that's happening, but that it's consistent and that we're having some sort of system to know that that's happening, right? And I'm a big one-on-one fan. There's so many different avenues to do that, but it's also asking the right questions. And so maybe your organization is doing this, and again, maybe you guys are doing so many of these different things, but I think it's really important to, number one, track that these conversations are happening. But I always say, if it's not written down, it never happened, right? So these types of conversations, even summary, needs to be written down, right? Of, hey, this is the question that was asked, this is the answer that I got. But I want to know things like, what are you most concerned about? What's one thing that we could fix, right? Over the next month, what's one thing that you think we could fix that would make things better for our internal team? What's one thing that you think we could fix that would make things better for our customers? I mean, you're dealing with them every single day, and helping that be an expectation for them, right? Helping them know that this is what we want for them as well. And so by doing that, we can really track some of those things down. And so if it's a key metric specifically we're talking about retention, but we're really talking about drilling down deeper to say, gosh, if we get a lot of feedback on things that we can improve, it's constructive, we loop back around and let them know what we fixed, and we let them know what we didn't decide to move forward with, whatever that can look like. Gosh, if we track that with all of our leaders and all of our teams consistently, man, we're gonna be doing some pretty great work here. We're probably gonna affect some things in some real positive ways as well. And so the other piece with scorecards is everybody knows what the score is. I don't know about you guys. So I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1980. And there was this thing that started, and I don't know specifically where things are at right now, but they kind of got this weird thing where it was like there's no real score. I remember playing soccer one time. It was just a bunch of us, and I think I was maybe in second grade, and we were kicking the ball back and forth, and I was like, cool, what's the score? I'm like, oh, we don't keep score. Well, that's stupid. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I want to know what the score is. Like, are we winning? Are we losing? How many goals did I score? Like, I don't know. I wasn't great at soccer, so I don't know that I scored any goals. But people want to know the score. Thank you. You know, we all do internally. And so when something's set up that's artificial, where we don't actually know the score of what we're accomplishing every day, we don't know what the impact of that is every day, then that will always lead to less and less motivation in the work we do. But the cool part is once we have really firm scorecards, I work with another business here out of Michigan as well, and they didn't have any scorecards for any of their frontline team. So what they did instead is they said, hey, when we have really great financial performance, we're going to focus on these 6 metrics. When we have great financial performance at the end of the year, we're going to give bonuses to everybody, frontline staff, everybody, right? And you think, oh, that'd be awesome because, you know, they don't necessarily have to have bonuses. It's cool that they're getting that. The team absolutely hated it because they had no control and had no idea what actually influenced that financial performance. So one year they would get money, and the next year they wouldn't. And then next year they would. You know, it just was weird. And they were like, we'd rather just not get a bonus because we'd rather have more certainty than have money and then not have money. So what we'd rather do is have you help us know, this is where we came in, is to know what the scorecard is, to say, when I'm talking to a customer, or if I call so many people per day or per month, or what are the things that I'm doing in my job that actually influence some of these financial numbers? What if we tracked that instead? What if we did bonuses on that instead? I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. You know, everybody was a lot more excited about that. So that's what we did. We kind of threw away the old plan and said, why don't we just focus on your guys' daily behaviors and how you get to help influence things in each of your specific roles, right? So whether you're in accounting or you're in HR, or you're in compliance, or you're in, you know, customer service or sales or whatever it is, everybody has specific things that they can do, not only to track their own performance every day, but once we know what the scorecard is and I can look at the scoreboard and say, gosh, I'm winning. This is awesome. Or wow, our team is winning. Or man, we're off pace a little bit here. What do we need to do? If your organization doesn't have that to every person on every level, I'm just telling you, you're missing out.